on the surface, initially, it looks like a huge fail for the Tigers front office. Honestly, I mean, they did. We'll talk about uh, the trade they did make later, but uh, in addition to not being able to trade Eduardo Rodriguez or not being able to complete one, uh, they also, unless I missed it, they didn't trade Cisnero or Shreve or anybody else, right?
Correct.
They didn't trade any of their tradable pieces. We thought tradable pieces. Perhaps we overreacted or overestimated the value of all those guys, but a lot of other players were moving. And one of the main things that I had hoped we'd see from Scott Harris when they signed him, and one of the things I complained about Al Avila was that there was never any creativity. Just not. They didn't try any sort of outside of the box moves. Nothing taking on cash. And today we see the White Sox getting Luis Patino for cash. We see Cleveland getting Khalil Watson in a deal. Like, I mean, maybe he doesn't work out, right? He's had some issues, but it's taking a chance and buying low on people. And yeah, it's in the Tigers. They made a single trade for a single player in high A. It felt very much like something Alvila could do, right?
John, go ahead, because yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I saw Chris's tweet. He said this, either it's a career-defining blunder for Scott Harris unless the Tigers win the Central or they work out a long-term extension with Eduardo Rodriguez. We don't know if that's going to happen. We don't know how motivated he is to stay in Detroit. Obviously, he declined the deal to go to the Dodgers for, I believe, family reasons. I don't know if we're ever going to find out what that deal looked like and what players were coming back. I don't know if we even want to. I mean, what I was looking at is the Baltimore Orioles. I really thought with the Dodgers trade not happening, I looked at them, but obviously they were able to get Jack Flaherty near the end. Only got one prospect for Jack Flaherty. The
They ended up
Cardinals
getting
did.
two.
Oh, they did get two?
They got the Prieto and Rom.
Prieto, one of the best prospects that Baltimore has, a left-handed bat with power. And you know why they got Jack Flaherty? Because analytically speaking, he's good against righties. Righties only bat 235 against him, and they use that wall out there.
Yeah. So if you guys could confirm this, do the Tigers get a comp pick if Eduardo Rodriguez is opts
Nope.
out?
They do not because
Nada. Go ahead. Nada.
Boston
Nada.
already gave him a qualifying offer 2 years ago. So and that's the thing. Like you can say, all right, well, nobody met the Tigers' price. Well, what value do you place on 12 starts for the rest of a season when you're almost certainly not going to win the division? How much does that matter? And I would say basically nothing. They could have traded Erod for, as somebody else said that the JD Martinez poo-poo platter, right? And it would have been fine because if you really like Eduardo Rodriguez, you can go out and re-sign him in the offseason after he opts out. So, yeah, it just feels like just like a huge mistake, and something. It feels like they weren't ready. How they didn't know that Rodriguez would veto a trade to the Dodgers is kind of stunning. And who knows? Maybe there's a lot more to this story, but yeah, it feels like a very disappointing outcome for a team that we got to be honest, like they're not really competitors, and this was one of their only ways to acquire more talent, and they didn't. So it's a bummer.
I mean, just if you try to take an optimistic approach, I mean, the hope would be that maybe there's something behind the scenes of Eduardo Rodriguez expressing interest to be here long term, to playing out his contract. I mean, you can hope that, but yeah, I mean, it's tough to see because with the farm system not being as strong as we'd like it to be, this was kind of the guy we looked at from the beginning of the season as the guy who could kind of get that Justin Henry Malloy type of return to really make this farm system a bit deeper, and for that not to happen. And even like the Michael Oreja trade was fine for what it was. To me, what was disappointing was not trading Cisnero or not trading Shreve, not packaging those guys together, like you said, getting creative. I mean, I was even thinking of if there's a prospect in another team's organization that Scott Harrison and the Tigers really liked, sending Lorenzen and maybe attaching a prospect in the Tigers organization to kind of get an upgrade and get a young player they really like. There was really a lack of creativity, and to come away with a second base prospect who, I mean, he has some potential. I mean, none of his tools really stood out to me. He is solid at drawing walks. But it's very underwhelming kind of reaction right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a solid return. I think for Lorenzen. That's it. We have him. My initial reaction is he's probably pretty close to Kevin McGonigal as a player, who the Tigers just drafted. You know, everybody was pretty excited about. It's a hit first kind of profile, and that seems to be what the Scott Harris front office is targeting: the guys who actually have good hit tools and don't strike out a ton. Um, but yeah, it feels like you know the subsequent lack of moves. It just remains kind of bewildering, honestly. And we're setting up for a very strange scenario where Eduardo Rodriguez is probably going to get booed in his next home start for wanting to stay in Detroit and not go to Los Angeles. It's going to be a really weird thing. And I hope that fans don't take that out on him, right? Like he through his quality play earned the right to get a large free agent contract and earned the right to get a no trade clause, and he exercised it. And that's we're pro labor here, right? This is what we want from guys. We just wish maybe that there was a better backup plan in place. And now I'm like absolutely fascinated, and who knows if we'll ever find out who the Dodgers were going to give up for him, what that deal was. So yeah, I don't know. Tigers fans have to, I've seen some responses to my tweet about saying that was a huge overreaction, and maybe it was. I try to think that I'm not being a huge fan about this, right? I just looking from a business perspective, you're kind of wasting an asset. But again, we don't know the whole story. Hopefully, Rogelio will come back after the press conference and tell us all the details and explain to us why it was actually a good move.
Maybe this means the Tigers are trying to compete a lot sooner than we thought they were. Maybe this means Eduardo Rodriguez is in their, short-term plans to compete next year and build a rotation around him, Manning, Skubal, and Mize. The free agent market, like we've said, there's some pitchers out there. Jack Flaherty is a guy I really would like the Tigers to target next offseason. But maybe this means the Tigers are going to try to win and stay competitive throughout this season and hopefully in the next season in a division where there wasn't a single buyer in the AL Central this year, which just goes to show you how open this division is potentially for the next couple of years to come.
Yeah, it's a strange world where we're complaining about a team that perhaps not trying to, fold and trying to compete a little bit, and we saw other teams kind of play both sides, right? Like Arizona traded Andrew Chafin to Milwaukee, and you can do that, but the Tigers didn't acquire anybody else to help now. Their only recourse, I guess, would be to do what everybody's been wanting them to do all year and start calling up Justin Malloy and Parker Meadows and Colt Keith, and hopefully those guys give you a jolt to the offense, because that's what's really been missing, right? The pitching, for the most part, has been solid this year. It's just the offense goes dormant for seemingly games at a time. But that's an awful lot to ask from these prospects, and people always overestimate, based on performance in AAA. They think, oh, these guys can come up and hit right away, and that's just not reality. But it's just an extremely weird situation that I can't remember a Tigers deadline going like this. Like the one that sticks out the most to me is maybe 2005. Was it 2005, 2008? I don't know. When they traded Pudge Rodriguez instead of going for it. That would have had to been 2008, I think. But yeah, so I don't know. We're just really left to ponder what exactly happened, and hopefully, like I said, we'll get answers on that. They probably won't be sufficient answers. Scott Harris will probably say we didn't like the values that were out there. And Rogelio talked about, he loved the return that the Cardinals got for Flaherty. That's kind of what he was hoping for the Tigers. Now, I think he's a bit mistaken about saying Cesar Prieto has power. He's a Luis Arraez light. He's all hit, but he hits like crazy, and that's something the Tigers could use. But yeah, we're in a strange position, that's for sure.